Roll Tide, everyone, and welcome to Tide TV This Week. I'm Seth Payne, filling in for Roger Hoover, joined by Kira Goldstein. And Kira, I feel like there's something important happening this weekend.
Yeah, I kind of get that feeling too, just a little bit.
Yeah, well, the Alabama Crimson football team made the transition from fall camp to game week on Monday. The Tide practice on Monday through Thursday, and then traveled to Columbia, Missouri on Friday for Saturday's season opener. That matchup against the Mizzou Tigers will take place on Saturday night at 6 p.m. in Memorial Stadium because it is finally here, Kira. It's game week.
Yeah, it is, Seth, and I can't wait. Earlier this week, the coaches announced their preseason All-SEC team, and the Crimson Tide earned a league-best 11 selections.
Yeah, they also earned a league-best 8 first-teamers, including 5 on offense. You see running back Najee Harris, wide receivers Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle, and then offensive linemen Landon Dickerson and Alex Leatherwood were selected. The first-team honorees on defense are linebacker Dylan Moses, defensive lineman LeBrian Ray, and defensive back Patrick Surtain. Jalen Waddle rounds out the first-team selections, landing an additional spot on the special list for all-purpose player and as a return specialist.
Offensive lineman Deontay Brown was named to the second team, while Landon Dickerson made another appearance on the third team as well as the center, along with fellow offensive lineman Evan Neal and defensive back Josh Jobe.
Yeah, Alabama had 8 first-team selections on the media's preseason All-SEC team with a 5-man group on offense that is made up of seniors Landon Dickerson, Najee Harris, Alex Leatherwood, and Devontae Smith, along with junior Jalen Waddle. And the defensive trio features juniors LeBrian Ray and Patrick Surtain, along with senior Dylan Moses. Waddle again occupies 2 slots in the specialist group at return specialist and all-purpose player.
Senior offensive lineman Deontay Brown is the Crimson Tide's lone second-teamer. Alabama's group is rounded out on the third team with sophomore DJ Dale on defense to go with junior Mac Jones, sophomore Evan Neal, and Dickerson again, this time at center.
And Alabama was picked by the media to win the SEC Western Division. The Crimson Tide also received the most votes to win the SEC championship. Once again, no shocker there. The Tide finished at 77 points compared to just 7 for both Georgia and LSU.
There's not a lot of change at the top of the Associated Press Top 25 this week.
Yeah, the top 8 are really going to stay the same. You see Clemson again at 1, Alabama at 2, Oklahoma at 3, Georgia at 4 with Florida at 5. The conference, the SEC, has 8 teams in the top 25, and it's really hard at this point to argue that the SEC isn't the best team in college football.
Absolutely, they are a pretty dominating force.
Yeah, well, it is game week, as we have mentioned, and coming up next, a former Crimson Tide quarterback joins us to preview the season opener for the Tide against Missouri. We'll have that and more coming up next.
Tide TV This Week is presented by the University of Alabama, where legends are made. Ford, for great offers on F-150, see your local Ford dealer. Proud sponsor of the Crimson Tide.
Well, if that doesn't get your heart racing and get you ready for Crimson Tide football, I'm not sure what will.
Absolutely, I agree. And now our Christopher England joins us as he's joined by a former Crimson Tide quarterback to preview the season opener against Mizzou. Christopher?
To preview this week's matchup for the Crimson Tide, I'm joined by former Alabama quarterback and current Crimson Tide Sports Network analyst John Parker. It's great to see you, John Parker.
Man, it's good to be here. Game week, we're coming back. It's so excited to kick this season off.
It's finally here. And, for the Tigers, they opened the season with a new head coach. Eli Drinkwitz led Appalachian State to a 12-1 record last season with the Sun Belt Conference Championship. But they're down several players due to COVID. 12 earlier in the week. It's down to 7 at the midpoint. They've also lost several players due to them opting out of the season. Could depth be an issue for the Tigers on Saturday?
I don't think there's any question about it. This season, I think, depth is going to be an issue for everybody the whole season. We're playing 10 games in the SEC. There's going to be injuries. There's going to be people getting sick. Just something you got to deal with. Not something you want to deal with if you're Missouri. First game against Alabama. It's gonna be tough having the limited number of people they do. But there's a lot to be unexpected from Drinkowitz and the Missouri Tigers. New look offense, new look everything for these guys. We don't know who's going to start at quarterback, so who knows? It's gonna be an interesting game. It's gonna be an interesting year.
As you just mentioned, along with that, there are a lot of unknowns on the offense for Missouri. The Tigers will have a new starting quarterback. There are questions on the offensive line, but they do have a new #1 receiver, a Virginia Tech transfer, Damon Hazelton. They also have a pretty solid duo returning at running back. What can the Tide expect from a new-look Missouri offense on Saturday?
I think both run and pass. They've got a lot of different weapons at receiver, 2 really good running backs that are, one of them's getting close to being the all-time leading rusher for Missouri. I think they're going to try to maintain balance, just like every offense does, right? You come in, you want to be 50 pass, 50% run, just to keep the defense on their heels. I think you take shots. I think if you're Missouri, you try to go after Alabama's secondary early. There's some new guys back there, some true freshmen, a lot of inexperience that defense in the secondary. Whereas our strength last year, it's a question mark right now. It really is.
Missouri ranked 14th in total defense last season. They have an All-American returning along with their sacks leader. Their defensive coordinator was also retained by Drinkowitz. Do you expect the Tigers to kind of return to form on defense against the Tide?
Yeah, going to be the strength of their team is the defense with so many guys coming back with like you said, their coordinator returning. So they're going to try to get back and disrupt Mac Jones. They're going to try to put some pressure on him, confuse him, and try to get in the backfield. But it's going to be tough for them with the amount of weapons and all of the different things that Sarkisian's going to do for Alabama on offense. But I think this is the strength of Missouri Tigers is their defense, especially in the secondary. 6 guys coming back that played and contributed last year for the Tigers. So, they're going to try to intimidate Alabama early, get up there, press, and just try to disrupt the passing game.
Well, for Alabama, there are playmakers all over the field on offense, running back, receiver, quarterback. What do you expect from Alabama on Saturday on offense?
Points. I think they're going to score and try to do what they did last year. Sarkisian back, many of the guys back on offense. We lost 2 receivers to the first round, but we have Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle right behind them. Najee Harris, Brian Robinson, a lot of production for them. My favorite thing is 4 returning offensive linemen. I mean, we're going to be really strong up front, in contention for the Joe Moore Award, which goes to the best offensive line unit in the country. I'm excited to see this team, especially on offense, because there's so many guys, so much firepower coming back.
On defense for the Crimson Tide, they allowed 18.6 points per game last season, the most the Tide has allowed since 2007. To compare, they allowed just over 8 points per game in 2011, but Alabama gets a big boost in return of linebacker Dylan Moses. Do you think his return will help the Tide return to form on defense?
Yeah, I think he's a big guy to get back. Injured last year, right before the season, and then coming back this year, had a chance to go to the draft. A lot of people were questioning whether he's going to go or come back. Comes back, such a leader for Alabama, getting ready for this crazy COVID 2020. I expect to see a lot of big things from him. A lot of people coming back up front for Alabama's front 7 on defense.
Mizzou expects a capacity of around 11,800 fans at Memorial Stadium. As you said, the COVID has a huge impact on this game. Will that kind of nullify the home field advantage for the Tigers?
I think so. I really do. I think with so many limited seats throughout the whole SEC, I think it's going to be different. I think it'll be some adjustments for the players. You go in, you run through the tunnel, you're just expecting all this energy. I just don't think it's going to be there like we've seen in the past. I think it's good for younger players. I think we'll hear some coaching from the sidelines, some more yelling from the coach, get lined up right or watch out for this play. I think we'll see a lot of that. So I think the home field advantage is going to be removed, and I think it's going to be a lot of leadership. Can the guys get themselves ready and get, internally get the juices flowing?
Well, kickoff is scheduled for 6 o'clock on ESPN. Thank you for joining us, John Parker. Look forward to talking with you again next week.
Can't wait. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. Stay with us. We'll have more Tide TV This Week coming up next.
Tide TV This Week is presented by Ford. For great offers on F-150, see your local Ford dealer. Proud sponsor of the Crimson Tide. The University of Alabama, where legends are made.
Welcome back. As we showed you last week, several former Crimson Tide stars had huge performances in week 1 of the NFL season, and week 2 was no different.
No, it wasn't. 48 former Alabama players saw action in the NFL this past week, and of those 48, several made huge impacts on the outcome of the game, starting with the running backs. Josh Jacobs, he led all former Crimson Tide running backs with 88 yards on the ground as he helped the Raiders improve to 2-0 with a win over the Saints. And as you can see, there have been several great running backs in Raider history, but Josh Jacobs tops the list with the most rushing yards through the first 15 NFL games with 1,311 yards, surpassing the great Marcus Allen and Bo Jackson. And Bo knows that Josh Jacobs is going to be a star in Las Vegas.
Absolutely. Kenyon Drake wasn't far behind with 86 yards as he averaged over 4 yards per carry for the Cardinals, as they also improved to 2-0 with a win over the Washington football team.
Yeah, you know the vibe. And the reigning NFL rushing champion Derrick Henry surpassed 4,000 career rushing yards as he totaled 84 yards with the Titans as they improved to 2-0. Congrats, King Henry.
Congrats, King. I am starting to sense a theme here, Seth. It seems like if you have an Alabama running back, you end up 2-0.
Yeah.
Mark Ingram totaled 55 yards and put an exclamation point on the Ravens' win over the Texans with a 30-yard direct snap touchdown run.
And a couple of former Crimson Tide receivers squared off on Sunday. Calvin Ridley hauling in 7 catches for 109 yards and 2 touchdowns as he is tied for the NFL lead in receiving yards this season with 239.
And over on defense, Quinnen Williams had a monster day for the Jets. Williams finished with 4 tackles, 3 assists, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for a loss, and 1 quarterback hurry. Woo, and even a forced fumble. Wow, my goodness, big day for the defensive tackle for the Jets.
Huge day for the Jets, Jets. But Landon Collins also had a big day. The Washington safety finished with 5 tackles, a sack, a pass deflection, and an interception for the football team.
And Marlon Humphrey had a big day in the Ravens win. Humphrey finished second on the team with 7 tackles, 6 solo, a half sack, and a forced fumble that resulted in a Ravens touchdown.
And let's take it to Club Dub. Eddie Jackson helped the Chicago Bears improve to 2-0 as he had a game-high 8 tackles, including 7 solo in the win over the New York Giants.
My goodness, what a week for Crimson Tide in the NFL. And that is just some of the great performances. Many other former Crimson Tide players had big games as well for their NFL squads.
Yeah, there were really so many that we couldn't even fit them all in, but that's a good problem to have. Now back here in Tuscaloosa, the Alabama soccer team opened up the season with a bang. We'll visit with a star of the Crimson Tide season opening win when we return.
Welcome back. The University of Alabama soccer season got underway this past weekend in Tuscaloosa as the Tide hosted the Tennessee Volunteers.
Yeah, and it was a great day for soccer here in T-Town, and it didn't take long for the Tide to get on the board. Riley Mattingly put one into the net on a penalty kick in the 19th minute to put Alabama up 1-0. All business there from Mattingly, but fast forward to the second half, and it's Mattingly again with a beautiful header off the foot of Felicia Knox to get the Tide another goal, 2-0 Tide. But 1 minute later, Serena Pham with some fancy footwork, give them the Texas two-step. That's the 3rd goal of the day for the Tide. The route was on. Tennessee would score later in the match, but a final score in the season opener, Tide win 3-1.
Yeah, they were on fire, man. It was insane to watch. The star of the game for the Crimson Tide was Riley Mattingly, obviously. Her 2 goals were the difference in the game for the Crimson Tide, and her performance earned her a spot on Top Drawer Soccer's Team of the Week. To talk more about the big win and her performance, our Maddie Davis joins us now along with Riley.
Thanks, Kira and Seth. Now joined by Alabama soccer forward Riley Mattingly. Riley, thanks for joining us today. It was a crazy offseason, week 1. You scored 2 goals. What was the excitement like going into this game?
I mean, you really can't even put it into words. It has been so long since we played a game. It honestly felt like the night before that Friday, it was like Christmas Eve. I was so excited. I couldn't wait to get out on the field with my teammates again, playing somebody that wasn't each other. So it was unreal. It was really exciting.
And it was the first on-campus sporting event. So what was that like?
It was really cool. I mean, we only got to have like those who were on our player passes come in. So there wasn't as many fans in the stands, but it was different and almost cooler in the way because we had fans like come sit in their lawn chairs like behind the goal outside the fence. So that was pretty cool. Like they were pulling their cars up and little kids were out there playing, watching the game. That was really cool.
Now, the first goal, that penalty kick, was strictly business, but the header, I mean, that was so exciting. What was it like after that?
I think it's just more exciting scoring in the run of play. The penalty kick, I had to send Casey Wirtz a thank you card after that one because she took a nice boot to the face and she got a little fat lip out of it. And I kind of got I reaped the benefits for sure from that. But it was good to be up 1-0, but I think going up 2-0 and scoring like a header in the run of play was way more exciting. And Felicia Knox, the freshman, I mean, she's a phenomenal player, and she got her first point with the assist. So I think you could definitely, if anybody's watching the game, you could definitely tell how excited we were after that second goal.
Now, going forward to Mississippi State, what do you think y'all can take from the last game to the next?
I think against Tennessee was one of our best starts. Coach West likes to always tell us to come out flying, and, you know, it's about territory. So I think if there's one thing that we need to take away from Tennessee and do the same thing against MSU, it's continue to high press and get after them and make them feel uncomfortable.
Thanks for joining us, Riley. Good luck this season, and roll Tide.
No problem. Thank you for having me. Roll Tide.
Seth and Kira, back to you.
Well, thank you, Maddie. Also in action this past week was the Alabama cross-country team. Alabama took part in an all-Southeastern Conference meet at the Commodore Classic in Nashville this past Saturday.
Yeah, and Jamie Reed led the Crimson Tide women to a trio of top 5 finishes as she crossed the finish line victorious in the women's 6K. The Crimson Tide women took second to Kentucky, while the Alabama men's squad finished 4th.
Well, stay with us. We'll have our Players of the Week coming up next. Welcome back. Let's take a look at our Players of the Week. They are brought to you by Payless Drugs.
Seth, how could we not go with soccer's Riley Mattingly? 2 goals led the Alabama soccer team to a 3-1 win in their season opener over Tennessee. For her performance, Mattingly earned a spot on Top Drawer Soccer's Team of the Week.
Yeah, and then going to cross country, Jamie Reed, the sophomore, broke her own personal record in the 6K event with a time of 20:57.5. In last weekend's season opener, Reed was also named the SEC Women's Runner of the Week for the first time in her career.
And those are our Payless Drugs Players of the Week.
Thanks everybody for watching. We hope to see you next week, and roll Tide, everybody.
Roll Tide.
This has been a presentation from Learfield IMG College.